Now that you know some tips and testing strategies for the reading and writing section of the SAT, let's dive into the math section. So some overall tips for the math section that I have is to always start with the grid-ins. So the grid-ins are the ones where you actually have to produce your own answer. There's no multiple choice or something you can just guess on because it's really blank and you have to fill in your own answer. So these always come at the end of every section, and there are 5 on the non-calculator portion and 8 on the calculator portion of the section. Starting with this is a great way to use your time efficiently because most of the times these might be the trickier problems or the ones that are going to take longer, and again, you can't even guess if you run out of time. So always beginning with those is a great testing strategy. Now that you know this overall tip, let's dive into each specific section of the math portion of the SAT. So starting with the non-calculator portion, one type of problem that always stumped me was systems of equations problems. So system of equations problems, they can be really hard to do very fast and they're really easy to make simple mistakes on. I know I always knew how to do them, but carrying over the little minuses and the pluses can get really hard to keep track of, especially when you're on a time crunch. So here is a foolproof trick. Use the test to your advantage and plug in the answer choices directly into the system. Don't even try to solve the system itself. When you have all the answers it possibly could be, there's one that's going to make the system equivalent. So just using those answer choices, using the test to your advantage can save you so much time, and you're going to get the right answer without a doubt. Another type of question that I really struggled on during the non-calculator portion of the SAT were seeing if two expressions were the same or were equivalent. A lot of the times, these types of problems required reducing very complex fractions to see if they ended up reducing to the same thing, and it's really easy to make simple mistakes when doing this kind of mathematics. Just like with the previous question, you're going to do it the hard way and you might not get the right answer if you're reducing these complex fractions. You might not reduce it enough, you might miscalculate and reduce it incorrectly, which will lead you to the wrong answer because then they're not going to be equivalent when maybe they are. So here's a trick that I learned that really helped me approach these problems. Instead of trying to, waste time and energy reducing these complex fractions, plug in a variable to the x, such as 1 or 2, and then see if those expressions give you the same number. So, I like to use 1 or 2 because it's really easy to just plug it into x and then see if they're equivalent. So this is a great way to use your time efficiently and not do the hard math when you don't need to, and you can just easily do some way more simpler multiplication or division instead of having to reduce these complex fractions. Now that you know some tips for the non-calculator section, let's dive into the calculator portion of the SAT. The biggest tip and trick that I learned for the calculator section is that you do not need to use your calculator for everything. Only use your calculator when you absolutely need to, and it's a really big complex multiplication or division, whatnot, but don't use your calculator for every little mental math problem. This was something that I didn't do on my test that I got a 1360 with. I was plugging every little thing into the calculator, and overall it really wasted a lot of my time. Be confident in your mental math calculations so you don't have to plug in like 1 plus 1 or 2 plus 2, 2 times 2 into your calculator for the calculator portion. Even though you're giving your calculator, you really should only use it when you need to, because even though it doesn't seem like a lot of time plugging in those numbers, overall it's going to really be a waste of your time. And then another thing I did to best prepare for my calculator portion was to really get to know your calculator. Calculators have amazing functions, and a lot of the times you don't know how to use them to their full advantage. They can do a lot of things, like whether it be as simple as changing a decimal into a fraction or vice versa, or even knowing how to graph on your calculator. Before the test, I really took some time to Google and research exactly what my calculator could do and what kind of functions it had. And then now that I knew when I was going into my test, I knew how to do the little things on my calculator, it really saved me so much time and overall really helped me on the calculator math portion of the SAT test. Now that you know a lot about how to prepare for the SAT in terms of self-studying, let's talk about day of preparation. I feel like preparing for the SAT, the day of is just as important as the time you spend preparing because it really can determine your mindset for the score that you're gonna get. The SAT is a very long and it's a grueling test, so making sure you prepare correctly the night before is just as critical. My first tip for day of preparation for the SAT is to get a good night's rest. I can't stress this enough. The SAT is such a long test that you really want to be as energized and as focused as you can, and that starts with getting a good night's sleep and being able to really relax before going in the next morning. So what I did and what I recommend you to do is set a deadline that after this hour the day before, you're not going to cram anymore. You're not even going to look at your notes. You're not going to worry about the SAT. Cramming the night before is not going to help you anyway. It's just going to make you more stressed. You already know all that you're going to know, really. So for me, at 4 p.m., I put away all my notes and I just really focused on relaxing and de-stressing before going into the test the next morning. So whatever that looks like for you, whether it be reading a book, listening to music, maybe going on a run, whatever you do to de-stress, I really recommend that. And making sure you get a good night's sleep, going to sleep early the night before is so critical for test preparation on the night of. My second tip is to pack protein-filled snacks for your breaks. So while you're not allowed to eat during the actual SAT test, you are given 5 to 10 minute breaks throughout the testing period. Just make sure you're checking your testing schedule because it really depends by region to region what this might look like, and making sure that you're eating at only the appropriate times for the test. But what I did was, on my day of the test for my 1540, I packed a hard-boiled egg and then a protein bar. And I think these really made such a huge difference, even though it was such a small change to how I approached the test. I was getting really tired after my reading section, and then we were given a quick break, and I had my protein bar, and it really helped me energize and refocus going into the math section. And surprisingly, I got a higher math score than I did reading, which had never happened before on any previous practice test or my real SAT. I had always done way better at reading and writing. It was always my stronger suit. But I ended up getting a higher math score, and I really attribute this to the pick-me-up that the snacks brought me and my ability to refocus and regain energy midway through the test. So make sure you're packing the snack, laying it out the night before, doing all that prep work so you're not stressing in the morning. But I think this big difference is attributed to such a small change, and you should really take advantage of it. My very last tip is to be confident. If you're preparing by following the tips and tricks from the beginning of this video, you'll be very well prepared going into your test and you really won't have anything to worry about. So just make sure you're confident in your answers, because when you're second guessing yourself, it can really waste you a lot of time on the test. You can always go back at the end of the test to check any of the answers that you might miss or you want to redo, but you shouldn't be second guessing yourself while you're going through the test, because that might, waste your time and you're gonna get stuck on one problem and then miss out on a lot of the other problems that you might have immediately known how to do. This brings me to the very end of my video. In this video, we covered different tips and testing strategies to approach the SAT, including making a testing schedule, a studying schedule, some tips and tricks for different sections of the SAT, and also the day of preparation. I followed this testing strategy and it really helped me when I was preparing for the SAT, go from a 1360 to a 1540 just by self-studying, and I believe this almost 200 point difference really put me at a great position when I was applying to colleges, and it allowed me to now attend my dream school at UCLA, which I'm very thankful for. I hope that you learned so much from this video, and I know that if you follow the testing strategies that I've listed, you too can achieve really similar success. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Thanks for watching.